I'm going to give a talk on Colin's broken hotspot. Thank you, Colin, for providing the internet today. On the list of people to thank today, I would like to thank the Foundry and whiskey in general for making this talk possible. Without whiskey, I wouldn't be up here today. I wouldn't have the liquid courage to talk with you people. So, thank you. So today I'm going to do a talk about threat actor emulation. The subtext is quick guide to validating security controls. So, funny story about the idea of this talk. Rude. The quick idea, so I was at DEF CON a couple weeks ago. I had stumbled my way into the adversary village, and they were giving a talk about security validation. And I don't know what it was exactly about this particular talk, but I was like, hey, I do that. And then they were talking about threat intel, and I was like, wait a minute. Is my job threat intelligence? And I didn't quite realize it. And so then I was like, well, I think this stuff is cool, so SecDSM will probably think it's cool. So this talk is a little bit about what I do, but this is a hashtag not sponsored talk. So who am I? I'm Brandon Gilbert. I'm a security engineer for Mandiant. Mandiant doesn't know I'm here, and this isn't a sponsored talk by Mandiant. Mandiant has nothing to do with it, nor does its subsidiaries or its future or past subsidiaries, blah, 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 insert tech, all the legal jumbo here. More about me, I'm an avid techie, dog mom, elite gamer, serial vacationer. I actually leave on vacation in 1 week from now. Pretty excited about it. I suck at PowerPoint. You guys will all figure that out here pretty soon. And I am the co-founder of the CumSoc. So what is the talk going to be on today? It's pretty much going to be broken up into 3 different sections. We're going to do definitions, philosophy, and resources. So definitions, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different things and what they are, because you have to understand what those things are in order to understand the philosophy of what I'm actually trying to talk about. And then I'm going to tell you how to do these things. So these things being security validation, whether that's in your personal network at home or whether that is in an enterprise environment. Everything that I'm talking about will actually apply to both scenarios. But yeah, we'll talk more about that. So definitions. What the hell is a threat actor? So a threat actor is the bad guy. If you Google what is a threat actor, you're going to get the Webster Merriam definition: any person or organization that intentionally causes harm to a digital sphere. It's really boring. Threat actors are the bad guys, and it's when companies or organizations like to lump bad guys into groups. That's a threat actor. 3 main groups: nation state, those are the Irans, those are the North Koreas, those are the bad guys. Ideologues, hacktivists, it's the hacker known as 4chan, those types of people. Script kiddies and trolls, those are the other groups. I'm going to dive into a little bit more about that. So, threat actors, let's talk about nation state. What is a nation state threat actor? I just picked 2 at random, APT35, APT38. APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat. Some organizations like to number them. So Mandiant, hashtag not sponsored. Closer, there we go. Mandiant, hashtag not sponsored, likes to number them. So APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, number 35, also known as Charming Kitten or Magic Hound. They are from Iran. So they're most famous for the HBO data breach. So in 2014, I think it was, hackers stole about 1.5 terabytes of data from HBO, including portions of season 7 of Game of Thrones. They demanded a ransom from HBO saying, we're going to release all this data unless you pay us a whole bunch of money. Unfortunately, they didn't know that Game of Thrones season 7 was utterly fucking worthless, and they got paid nothing. So APT38, which is known as the Lazarus Group, or Stardust Cholima, whatever the hell that means. So they're from North Korea. They're most famous for the Sony hack or the Bank of Bangladesh heist. So the Sony hack, this was in response to the movie The Interview. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen that. It's like with Seth Rogen and James Franco. It's like it's a movie about, like, comedy movie about a plot to assassinate Kim Jong-un. Apparently, when you make a movie about assassinating their dear leader, it makes them mad. So APT-38 attacked Sony, hacked Sony. They used an SMB exploit, a technique. That's a key word there. We'll learn a little bit more about what that word means. And they use that to get a foothold into the Sony environment and propagate through. They ended up using destructive tools on Sony. In this case, it wasn't a I want ransom, it was I want to fuck you up. So they did a lot of damage. Sorry, went too far. The Bank of Bangladesh heist was also pretty interesting. So if nobody's seen the Darknet Diaries, or listened to, you don't see podcasts. If nobody's listened to the Darknet Diaries podcast episode on the Bank of Bangladesh heist, I don't want to spoil it for you because they tell the story way better than I ever would. Jack Resider does. It was super cool. The APT-38 stole like $80 million from the Bank of Bangladesh, gambled it all, like literally gambled it, all through a Chinese casino and got off scot-free. Kind of insane. The story is way better than I do crazy stuff. But these are threat actors. These are the scary people that your CISO understands. I wanted to throw in a slide in here about CrowdStrike because I know they're sponsoring today. CrowdStrike has this super gimmicky website called the Adversary Universe, where they give all these threat actors really cute names. That's where this Cholima thing came from. What was it called? Stardust Cholima. I don't know, it's kind of neat. I swear that they paid more money in the marketing of it than the actual threat intelligence, but it's definitely worth checking out if you like fancy pictures and animations. So more definitions around threat actors. So this is the others portion, so not nation state. Ideologues, hacktivists, again, that's the hacker known as 4chan. If you remember the Occupy Wall Street attacks that happened, I don't know, long time ago, 2012 or something. So those are going to be hacks that happen more based on beliefs. They're not going to be organized nation state people, just angry people mashing their fists on the keyboard and causing things to break. And then there's skip kitties and trolls. This is like lulzsec, again, people that are just out there to wreak havoc. And people like you spinning up a Kali box and having no idea what you're doing and running exploits against things. So from a corporate perspective, we're not super concerned about that kind of stuff, but it's still definitely worth noting and is still considered a threat actor. I want to talk a little bit about MITRE. So this first slide is just talking about MITRE in general. Most of you guys know MITRE about MITRE ATT&CK. MITRE itself does a lot more things than just attack, but I don't really know what they do. If you Google it, they're a not-for-profit organization working for public interest. That's just from their About Us page. I'm not sure what that really means, but I assume that it has something to do with the cabal of hidden reptiles that rule the world. Yeah, that's MITRE. But MITRE ATT&CK is much more important. So the MITRE ATT&CK is a framework. This could be an entire talk in and of itself. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. And I know you guys can't read that. That's why my next slide has a zoomed in version of this. So, and if you notice, I did put the all rights reserved symbol next to attack, because if you don't, they probably will sue you. So up across the top, you have tactics, and then the vertical columns are techniques. If you haven't read what the MITRE ATT&CK framework is, you should probably check it out. So it's a foundation for a lot of threat models for a lot of large companies, and defense methodologies are based around this framework. Super important stuff. I highly recommend anyone here unfamiliar with it to go ahead and read up, study it, and do yourself a favor and pick a favorite TTP. That's my favorite question when I give interviews, is what's your favorite MITRE ATT&CK TTP? And it's really funny to see people lock up and have no idea like how to answer that. But My favorite MITRE ATT&CK TTP is T1558.003. You don't have to memorize that part, but you should have an idea of what a TTP is. So that in particular is around Kerberoasting. So adversaries that abuse valid Kerberos ticket requests in the TGT granting system. So they can sniff for those requests and then crack them offline. Super cool stuff. That's my favorite one. Otherwise, so the way that the MITRE framework is lined up is effectively from left to right. You have, it's in the order of the attack framework. So you can start out with something like phishing and end up at the end of it with something like exfiltrating data, right? What's your beginning? How are you going to get your initial foothold? It might be phishing. It might be exploiting a public service. It might be several different types of things. And then at the end, what's your end goal? Ransomware, right? Locking up all systems and demanding money? Or is it just to cause damage? Or is it to exfiltrate sensitive data? So from left to right, you'll read that, and those are the phases of the attack. Top to bottom, are within each phase is the technique that somebody might execute in order to achieve that particular tactic. Hopefully that makes sense. I did my best. Seriously, this could be a talk in and of itself if somebody wanted to deep dive into some of these tactics and techniques. I think it would make a really good talk for somebody that wants to study up on something and present. Again, leaning into the TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is what MITRE attack framework is built upon, the TTPs. So going back to what we were talking about before with APT35 and ATP38, you have TTPs, and I know you can't read that either, it's fine, whatever. So TTPs, I can say ATP35 generally uses these TTPs. Not always, but for the most part, this is their MO. This is how they operate. So what I can do is if I'm worried about ATP35, I can say, these are the techniques I'm really worried about. That's going to be important to what we get into next, which is talking around philosophy of what attack emulation is like, or how does it work. Philosophy. So the philosophy of a TTP and doing attack emulation starts around picking a threat actor. So you can pick a threat actor like ATP38. You can find their TTPs like we did before, all their techniques, their MO, right? I can cross-reference those TTPs to the attack framework. Now that I know who I'm worried about, because maybe I'm in the education sector, and I know that these organizations like to attack schools, so I have an idea of who my threat actor is that I want to pick. I know what they do. They love deploying ransomware. That's what loves to be deployed at schools. I can create a list based on existing threat intelligence of, hey, this school that works just like I do got attacked in this manner. There's a pretty good chance that if they were to target me, I would be attacked in this exact type of manner. So I can get that whole list of TTPs and I can chain them together utilizing the MITRE attack framework, and I can come up with an idea of what it should look like if one of these people were going to attack me. So now comes the fun part, is emulating that idea. So I want to take this idea of how I might be attacked, and I can transform it and attack my own infrastructure that same way. So I'm going to obviously not attack my production infrastructure. I'm going to build maybe a lab that mimics my infrastructure, and I'm going to execute these TTPs, right? Now, once I execute it, let's say that I attempt to deploy ransomware to my environment. The next thing I want to do is execute my incident response plan. I want to use this as my tabletop exercise to practice, if I am being attacked by ATP35, what does it look like? How am I going to respond? And then at the end of the incident response, you're going to do your after action report, your AAR. This is one of the most valuable things that an organization can do to prep themselves for these types of activities. If you're worried about a particular nation state, if you're worried about a particular group of people, this is the way to do it. This is the way that you can emulate their attack threat behavior in your environment and then be able to respond. So some of you in here are thinking, wait a minute, is this purple teaming? Kinda. The difference between purple teaming and this is we're not a lot of the time we're not attacking infrastructure directly. This can be a tool to be utilized during purple teaming, in that it is some red teaming techniques, it is some threat adversary techniques, and if you do it right, you should glean a lot of great information on how to defend your environment. So from that perspective, it is purple teaming. Is this red teaming? Is this automated red teaming? Is this pen test in a box? No, it's not, and it never will be, and it will never replace those things. Red teaming and penetration testing is super important. A pen test identifies exploits and vulnerabilities in an environment and tests your prevention of those exploits. Adversary emulation assesses how resilient your environment or your security stack in particular is to these types of threat actors, and will generally test not just prevention capabilities, but detection capabilities. So leaning again onto the pen testing is for attacking infrastructure. Have any of you guys ever used a Metasploitable? Metasploitable is like, it's pretty much you can deploy a VM and it's very, very Metasploitable, right? If you know what Metasploit is. That's essentially what we're doing in a lot of cases with this threat actor emulation, is I'm standing up a Metasploitable box in one area, and I'm standing up a Kali box in another. This is really breaking it down kind of simple, stupid. And I'm running the attacks between the two and trying to see how your network responds, trying to see how your SOC responds to that. Is your IDS or IPS going to respond to performing Metasploit type of activities between them? So yeah, that's hopefully philosophy-wise, that kind of gets you into the mindset of what we are trying to do at the end of the day. More philosophy, this is kind of definitions, I cheated. So we have atomic and anatomic tests. Atomic are just individual, I'm hyper-focused, I want to execute this specific TTP. We're going to dive into that a bunch here in a second. Anatomic is closer to evaluations. I'm going to chain TTPs together, and I'm going to create an entire storyline. And then I'm going to mimic that storyline of attack behaviors in my environment, and hopefully at the end of it, you'll get an idea of how your network would stand up against it. Some of these tools even are as simple as doing PCAP replays, which again is a function built into a lot of just basic security tools, or even Kali. A lot of times I'm taking a PCAP of an exploit occurring, I'm loading it into one box, and I'm replaying that PCAP towards another box. And I'm seeing how the network responds to that type of behavior. I'm going to get a little bit of juice here. Thank you. So let's move on into the next section. I want to talk about a scenario. So your CISO walks into the SOC. They heard on the news that insert country here that is scary at any given point in time, Russia, has been doing bad things. I am concerned about Russia because that's what Fox News told me to be scared of right now. How can I make sure that these bad people can't do bad things to me? Or Megacorp, whatever insert corporation here, has been attacked by ransomware. How do I make sure that this can't happen to me? I imagine any of us sitting in a SOC or being in a security engineering role have been asked these questions before and have heard this story before. So hopefully after this talk, you have the cool guy SOC response that can say threat actor emulation or security validation. That's the answer to those questions. Now I want to move into the resources portion of this talk. So I want to talk about what resources that you have to help learn about some of these things. So MITRE Ingenuity, again, we're talking about the evil cabal that is MITRE. MITRE Ingenuity is a subset of MITRE that has a whole bunch of really cool things. So this is one resource to help you prepare your organization for a threat emulation program. So let's say you're sold now and you want to give it a try. MITRE Ingenuity is probably the one-stop shop or the first place you should check out. So there is, within MITRE Ingenuity, you have the Center for Threat-Informed Defense. So they've released a free public repository of adversary emulation plans. It's kind of pretty cool. You can just go out to their website and search a APT group that you're worried about. And there's a whole list of TTPs that are designed to help your organization defend against them. So all the TTPs are mapped to the attack framework, of course, and everything is broken up into phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. This is part of their emulation plan that they publish out. So phase 1 is going to be your recon to initial access. This is going to be stuff like setting up phishing sites that emulate your website, right? If you have an Okta site or if you have a Microsoft site that is branded, right? Doing things like buying up domains that look like yours. So that's phase 1 of any sort of attack scenario. Phase 2 is going to be execution through lateral movement. So they've done their phishing. They have credentials now at this point. Phase 2 is how are they going to pivot into the important things in your environment. And then phase 3 is the payload, right? Are they trying to deploy ransomware? Are they collecting sensitive information? Are they grabbing the keys to your kingdom? Are they exfiltrating credit card data that you have unencrypted stored somewhere? That's kind of how they lay out, again, mapped to the MITRE framework, what an adversary emulation plan should look like. MITRE Ingenuity is a great resource for that. The other thing that they have is attack flow, which is super cool. So we've talked about how you can derive this list of TTPs, and I'll just hit next here. An attack flow is much more logic behind that. I can just have a list of TTPs, and I can throw that shit against the wall and see what sticks. That's one methodology. That's a shitty methodology. The other methodology of going about it is doing attack emulation graphing. So it is more logic behind it, if-then statements. It's not a lot of logic. It's pretty simple logic. It's the idea, I'm going to start with attack vector 1, spear phishing with an attachment. Odd, blast. Your email security blocked this. What am I going to do next? I'm just going to give up and lie down and cry. Right? That's not what actually happens. They're going to try different things. And this is the idea of doing attack graphs, where it's like, well, then I'm going to modify my spear phishing link. I'm going to modify my spear phishing email, and I'm going to put a link in it instead. Well, that didn't work either because apparently you trained all your users not to click links. Well, now I'm going to just comb the dark web for accounts that are already compromised. I found one. Now I'm going to move to phase 2. So if you follow the logic of this graph, then you're using that if-then logic. So we found a default compromised account. Now I'm going to move to the next step. So step 1 is saving a malicious file to a system. I have access to a file, and so on and so on and so on. I'm not going to go over it. In theory, if this entire thing were fleshed out, you would have a whole bunch of if-then statements filled all the way out from upper left to bottom right. And either the attack chain would end in the attack has failed, or the attack chain would end in the attack was successful. If the attack was successful, you lost. If the attack failed, you won. So that's the idea of presenting these into attack chains. And this is what we really like to do when we're actually emulating a threat actor, is we're going to put all of this into a chain that is logical and put logic around it. We're going to talk about open source tooling. So at the beginning of my presentation, I talked about how would I do this. This is the scary part of the talk, and this slide is really shitty, so we'll just move past this real quick. But what open source tooling is out there? Atomic Red Team, Infection Monkey, Caldera, Splunk Attack Range, and even the built-in Kali tools. I kind of talked about Kali and even just doing a Kali box and interpreter, right? So these are some of the open source things. These don't cost you a dime. You could deploy all this tomorrow. Let's talk about Atomic Red Team. This is one of the cool ones that I've played with the most recently. It's built and maintained by Red Canary. It's a library of attacks and tests mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. It's for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it's the dreaded live demo time. So everybody, glasses up. Let's drink to the live demo gods. This is going to be awful. All right. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. What? Yes. I did what you said, and I just put a constant ping up. You guys can't see my screen. Well, that's not the screen you're supposed to see. Oh, now you can see it? So you guys see a ping box just occurring infinitely? That kept the internet up. Thank you, Colin. I retract everything I said about your shitty internet earlier. Oh, God. The screensaver turned on. Nice, okay. Okay, so let's start on, oh God, I have too many tabs open. Let's start at the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So you guys all know what the MITRE ATT&CK framework is now because I told you about it. So I don't know, is this too small? Yeah, it's a little too small. But there we go. Is this better? Okay, so this is the right side, or the left side, sorry, of the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So initial access, execution, persistent, privilege escalation. So I'm going to test a couple of these here. I think I can scroll further to the right. Yeah, I want to be kind of in the middle of it. Give me a second. Yeah, let's look at the fun stuff like privilege escalation, credential access. So these are going to be some of the more fun areas of the MITRE framework. So I mentioned early on that my favorite TTP was 1558.003. So this is a Kerberoasting attack. Is anybody here familiar with Kerberoasting attack? I know Colin is. He did a whole fucking class on it. He probably knows more about it than I do at this point. So I already have this installed here. This is Atomic Red Team. It's so I installed it in Invoke Atomic. It's super easy to install. It's actually kind of insane how easy it is to install. This is literally it. So pulling down the install PowerShell script from the GitHub, which I will have linked, and if you guys need it, I can get it, and running just a simple install Atomic Red Team commandlet. And then from here, all you really have to do is use the format invoke atomic test, define your TTP that you're interested in running, and then pointing it to your atomics folder. So right now, I have AV disabled on this system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a Kerberoasting attack from the system to a domain controller that I have stood up here. Yeah, you don't need to worry about that. But what it's going to do, if anybody is familiar, I'm not going to go into how a Kerberoast attack works, but effectively, it's going to query the domain controller, find service accounts that have SPN records attached to it, request a ticket from those service accounts, and request it in a downgraded encryption format to try and crack that data offline. So I'll just hit enter here. And if it works, hell yeah, it did. Yeah, thank you, demo gods. So what we have here is it ran Rubius, which is a tool that does just that. It does Kerberoasting. It queried my domain controller for this service account. Can you guys read that? Is it too small? Okay, yeah, I'm seeing nods. So SVC Kerb test, and it has a service principal name attached to it that has a Kerberos ticket. this right here is my ticket. If I took this and I attempted to crack this offline, it would take approximately 2 seconds, maybe 5 minutes if it were really unlucky. It'd be very, very easy to crack. And then once you have access to that account, you can move laterally into whatever account that service account was designed for, or whatever system that service account was designed for. So it's really, really easy to run something like a Kerber roasting attack from Atomic Red Team. It honestly just takes like 10 seconds to actually set everything up and run it. So this would be great, again, going into the philosophy of around what are we trying to do. We know that adversaries use Kerber roasting. If you run an AD environment, you will be Kerber roasted if they get that initial foothold. How does your environment stand up against Kerber roasting? The only way to find out is if you go and run something like this and find out what would happen if you ran a Kerber roasting attack in your environment. Let's pick another. We're going to do, because I like this area of things, we're going to do more credential access stuff. How about LSAS memory? So 1003001. This is attempting to dump the credentials from the operating system via the LSAS process, which lives in memory. So what is that, 1003001? Oh God, don't look at that. That's my screensaver. All right, so there it is. I'm going to hit enter. You can see that it runs, hopefully, and it doesn't crash. Hell yeah, another drink to the demo gods. So part of it ran successfully, which is all we need. There is a hash right here. That's a password hash. And that is being pulled via Mimikatz. So I can see that Mimikatz was executed successfully on the system. Now, you're probably thinking, hey, in my highly advanced corporate environment, I would never let Mimikatz execute, right? Well, you're probably right, but I have AV turned off. So let's see how long this works. So we're going to turn everything on here. Oh, I clicked the wrong button. We're going to turn on virus and threat protection. That didn't break anything, right? Okay, got a UAC prompt. Let's try and run the same exact thing. Hello? Yeah. It probably shit the bed. Hey, there we go! So Windows security popped up. It detected that Mimikatz was being run that it was being ran. And it blocked it. Hey, security is validated. Hell yeah. So we know that if a threat actor came into your environment and tried to run Mimikatz, you'd be blocked. That's the entire purpose of the talk. Holy shit, we made it. Does anybody have a favorite TTP that they want to try? I know this is a horrible idea because it's got very little chance of working. Does anybody want to try something? Anybody? You think that this has an email server stood up on it that can receive a phishing email? All right, anything reasonable? I don't know, let's go look. Maybe. So what, that would probably, I made this giant so you guys could see, and now I can't see. So I imagine that would be under execution, right? I'm just going to pick one here. You want to create or modify a process, so that would be under persistence probably. Which vertical stack? Oh, this one? So 1543. What are the odds? 1543. That's what we're worried about, or that's what we're talking about, right? Create or modify a system process. 003. 003. Oh, let's try it out. 1543.003. This can only go well. 1543.003. Well, I see successes. Oh no, start service failed. It's probably because I still have AV turned on. AV doesn't really respond very, like, it's Microsoft. You gotta, give them credit where it's due. It doesn't always work perfect, but I imagine if I turned AV off, then something like this would work. The other night, I was playing with this with Tyler Lyons. What up? And we ran one, and it just immediately rebooted the system. So I went into the YAML files that are in the background that actually give the instructions on how Atomic Red Team works. And sure enough, at the bottom of the execution script was a shutdown command. And I was like, well, I suppose it worked because the system just randomly shut down. And now, if I look up my screensaver settings, wait, screensaver settings? Yeah, I get an elevated command prompt. So that's pretty fucking cool. If you ever need an elevated command prompt, apparently after running that one, you get an elevated, yeah. You can just try and lock your computer and get your screensaver to pop up, and you get an elevated command prompt. In fact, I bet you if I don't want to hit Windows L here because it'll nuke everything. I bet you if I lock, we'll check it later. All right, we're gonna go back to presentation mode. Let me know how bad this goes. You got FireEye. How about now? Oh, hell yeah. Okay, so that's Atomic Red Team. I'm not going to spend any more time on that. Thank you, demo gods, for making that successful for me. I'm going to kind of glide through this because I feel like I'm over time. Infection Monkey is another open source tool. This one's built by Guardicore. It's got a really cool graphic user interface, which as you can see from the Atomic Red Team one, it does not have. It's inspired by Netflix's Chaos Monkey, which was an automated network resilience testing tool. Netflix wanted a tool to just do random shit in the network to see what broke, in their production network to see what broke. And yeah, it's a great way of testing if your production network works or not. And the entire idea around Infection Monkey is I'm dead serious. I'm going to install malware on my production network and see how far it gets. That's what Infection Monkey is. If your organization is open to that level of risk, Infection Monkey is the right thing for you. But that's what it does. It self-propagates through your network. You give it some maybe basic credentials. It'll scan fingerprint machines. It'll find exploits that are available in your network. It'll exploit them and self-propagate. It's malware without the payload. It's kind of cool. I would never run it in my production environment because that is a horrible idea. But it exists. So if you want to emulate how ransomware would spread in your environment and you are brave as all hell, Infection Monkey. Caldera. This one is kind of the coolest one that I found. And what sucks is I was only going to do a live demo of one, and Atomic Red Team was way easier. So Caldera is built by MITRE Ingenuity. It is a red team adversary emulation platform. I talked about this before. If a salesperson comes up to you and says that they're going to automate your red team out of a job, they're lying. That won't ever happen. So the idea around this is you can create custom adversary profiles, build TTP or attack steps into the platform. You can execute and simulated malicious operations. This is kind of a one-stop shop for adversary emulation. It seems to be on the FOSS, in the FOSS world, it seems to be the most full-featured option. Effectively, it comprises a main server, distributed agents throughout a network that you can run TTPs between, and by running the TTPs between these nodes, you can trigger IDS, IPS alerts. You can run their agents on endpoints and emulate some of the stuff like we saw in Atomic Red Team. In fact, Atomic Red Team is built into this platform for their endpoint testing. Yeah, it's just really great. I'm not going to dwell too much on it. This, again, could be an entire talk. Caldera is pretty sweet. Pretty sweet tool. Splunk attack range, I'm not going to go a lot into this one either. This takes all of the things that we talked about and builds an entire adversary emulation platform. It's kind of fucking insane the way that it works. It utilizes Vagrant and Terraform to deploy all the VMs and stand up for you an entire attack emulation lab. So if you knew what your tech stack was, you could deploy your tech stack to this lab environment, and you could very easily run your attack TTPs and all that jazz in this environment. It would be really, really cool to do. Ain't nobody got time for that. At least I don't. Corporate tooling. This talk is not sponsored by Mandiant. Corporate tooling, you have Attack IQ and Simulate. These tools, you're obviously outside of the FOSS space, you're going to get much better continuous support and updates. The big thing that the corporate tooling has that none of the FOSS tools are going to have is integration into SIM technologies. This is the crazy part. I can run an attack through a network, and then I can plug into your Splunk. I can, via the API, run a query on your Splunk environment and correlate that to the attack I just ran. Because I know my source, my destination, and my port. I can query your SIM, and I can find that. And then I can determine, was this just a boring-ass traffic log that doesn't mean anything to me? Was this an IDS log? Or even things up to, did this hit your notables index? And was this bubbled up to analyst eyes? So I can see everything from, did we see remnants of it, to was this brought to an analyst's attention? That's what you're going to get with the corporate stuff. I'm not going to dive into that, or else people will think it's sponsored. The end. Are there any questions? That was too long. If anybody wants links or sources, I filled out this slide, and then I forgot to put in the QR code or the paste dump that I had for it. So if anybody wants sources on any of this stuff, I have like 50 links. Just talk to me. Thank you.